The apartment on Cedar Avenue was a dream find for Lauren, high ceilings, exposed brick, and rent she could actually afford in the city. She'd been desperate to move out of her cramped studio, so when she saw the listing for a two-bedroom share, she jumped at it. The catch was the roommate, Ethan, but he seemed perfect on paper, quiet, tidy, a graphic designer who worked from home. They met over coffee, and he was polite, if a little reserved, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. Lauren signed the lease that day, ignoring the faint unease she felt when he handed her the keys. Moving in was a whirlwind. Ethan helped carry boxes, his movements precise, almost mechanical. The apartment was spotless, every surface gleaming, though Lauren noticed his room was locked when he wasn't in it. He said it was for client privacy, and she didn't press. The first few days were uneventful. Ethan kept to himself, headphones on, tapping away at his laptop. But at night, Lauren couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She'd hear soft sounds from his room, shuffling, clicking, sometimes a low hum, like a machine running. She told herself it was just his work, but the noises never stopped, not even at 3 a.m. By the third night, Lauren realized she'd never seen Ethan sleep. He was always awake when she went to bed, his door cracked open, a sliver of blue light spilling into the hall. She'd wake to find him in the kitchen, brewing coffee, his eyes bright but shadowed, as if he'd been up for days. "Do you ever crash?" she joked once, and he just stared at her, then laughed, a sharp, hollow sound. "Sleep's overrated," he said, turning away. That night, the noises grew louder, a rhythmic tapping, like fingers on a keyboard, but faster, unnatural. Lauren lay awake, her bedroom door locked, wondering if she'd made a mistake moving in. The apartment itself started to feel strange. Lights flickered when Ethan was home, though the bulbs were new. Her phone would lose signal in certain spots, especially near his room. Once, she found her keys in the fridge, though she swore she'd left them on the counter. Ethan was always there, watching her reactions, his head tilted like he was studying her. She started keeping a journal, noting the oddities, the hum, the lights, the way Ethan's shadow seemed to linger on the walls even after he'd left the room. On the fifth night, she woke to silence, no tapping, no hum, and that was worse. She crept to her door and peeked out. Ethan's door was open, his room dark, but she felt eyes on her, heavy and unblinking, from somewhere in the shadows. Lauren confronted him the next morning, keeping it light. "Hey, what's with the all-nighters? You building a spaceship in there?" Ethan didn't smile. "Just work," he said, his voice flat. But his eyes followed her as she left for her shift at the bookstore, and when she came back, her journal was gone. She searched her room, the living room, even the trash, nothing. That night, the tapping returned, but now it came from the walls, not his room, circling her like a predator. She clutched her phone, debating whether to call a friend, but the battery died instantly, though it had been fully charged. Alone in the dark, Lauren whispered, "Ethan, is that you?" The tapping stopped. Then, from just outside her door, something scratched, slow, deliberate, like nails on wood. Lauren couldn't ignore it anymore. Ethan wasn't normal. She started watching him closely, pretending everything was fine while cataloging his habits. He never ate in front of her, though the fridge was always stocked with takeout containers she never saw him touch. He didn't have visitors, no calls, no mail. His laptop was always on, its screen angled away, glowing even when he wasn't in the room. Once, she glimpsed it, a mess of code, symbols she didn't recognize, pulsing like a heartbeat. When he caught her looking, he slammed it shut, his face blank but his hands trembling. The apartment was changing too. The air felt thick, like it was pressing against her lungs. Mirrors fogged up, showing faint shapes that vanished when she blinked. Her dreams were vivid, filled with endless hallways and Ethan's face, his eyes too wide, too bright. She'd wake to find her door ajar, though she locked it every night. Ethan denied touching it, but his excuses were thin, his voice clipped. "Old building," he'd say, shrugging. But Lauren found scratches on her doorframe, fresh and deep, like something had tried to claw its way in. She dug into Ethan's background, using her work computer to avoid his Wi-Fi. The lease had his name, but online, he was a ghost, no social media, no job history, nothing. She checked the apartment's records and found a string of tenants who'd left after months, citing personal issues. One blog post, buried on a local forum, mentioned a roommate who never slept and watched too much. The post was deleted mid-read, the page crashing. Lauren's stomach churned, she wasn't imagining this. The noises evolved. The tapping became knocks, sharp and erratic, sometimes spelling out patterns she couldn't decode. They came from the ceiling, the floor, even her closet. She bought earplugs, but the sounds burrowed into her skull. Ethan was always there, awake, his door open just enough to see her pass. She stopped using the living room, eating in her bedroom, but he'd knock on her door, asking random questions, about her day, her plans, like he was collecting data. His eyes never blinked when he spoke, and his smile was too perfect, like a mask. One night, Lauren woke to a new sound, a whisper, not human, more like static shaped into words. It came from her vent, hissing her name. She tore the cover off, shining her phone's light inside, but saw only dust and darkness. The whispering stopped, but her phone screen glitched, showing a photo she hadn't taken, her sleeping, taken from above. She screamed, dropping it, and Ethan was there instantly, standing in her doorway. "Bad dream?" he asked, his voice soft but wrong. She lied, saying yes, and he lingered, watching her until she shut the door. The photo was gone when she checked, but her phone's camera was warm, like it had been running all night. Lauren knew she had to leave, but fear kept her paralyzed. Ethan was everywhere, his presence seeped into the walls, the air. She found cameras, tiny ones, in the light fixtures, their lenses glinting like eyes. When she confronted him, he didn't deny it, just said, "For security," his voice calm, his eyes boring into hers. She stopped sleeping, surviving on coffee, her nerves frayed. The whispers grew louder, now in the walls, chanting fragments of her life, her job, her friends, secrets she'd never shared. She planned her escape, packing a bag in secret, telling no one. But Ethan seemed to know. He stopped working, sitting in the living room, staring at the wall, his laptop open to that same coded screen. The knocks were constant, shaking the apartment, and the lights surged, plunging them into darkness. Mia's things, her keys, her wallet, kept vanishing, only to reappear in his room, unlocked now, its walls bare except for a single photo, Lauren, asleep, pinned above his desk. The final night, Lauren waited until Ethan left for a rare errand. She grabbed her bag, heart pounding, and ran for the door. It wouldn't open, the lock was jammed, the handle ice cold. The whispers roared, filling the apartment, and the walls seemed to pulse, closing in. She smashed a window, climbing out, cutting her hand on the glass. As she stumbled onto the street, she looked back. Ethan was in the window, motionless, his eyes locked on hers, no expression, just endless watching. Lauren never went back. She crashed with a friend, then moved across the city, checking locks obsessively. The apartment was relisted, the rent even lower, but no one stayed long. She doesn't sleep much now, haunted by the hum, the whispers, the feel of eyes on her in the dark. Sometimes, her phone buzzes, showing a call from an unknown number. She doesn't answer, but she knows it's him, still awake, still watching, somewhere out there. When Alex moved to Portland for a new job, he needed a place fast. The rental market was brutal, but he found a gem, a cozy loft with skylights, shared with a roommate named Clara. She was a painter, vibrant and chatty, with a laugh that put him at ease. They clicked instantly during the tour, bonding over bad coffee and a shared love of sci-fi. The loft was quirky, slanted ceilings, odd nooks, but it felt like home. Alex signed the lease, grateful to have found Clara, who seemed like the ideal roommate. The first week was great. Clara cooked dinner, her canvases filling the living room with color. She was messy but considerate, leaving notes if she'd be out late. Alex settled into his room, a small space with a sloped ceiling and a vent that rattled at night. He noticed Clara's routine. She painted until dawn, her music drifting through the walls, then slept most of the day. It suited him, he was out early for work, their schedules rarely clashing. But something about the loft felt off, like it was holding its breath. At night, Alex heard noises, not Clara's music, but scratches, faint and irregular, coming from the walls. He chalked it up to pipes or mice, but they followed a pattern, starting near his vent and circling the room. Clara laughed when he mentioned it, saying, "Old buildings, you know." But her eyes darted away, and she changed the subject. Alex brushed it off, but the noises grew louder, more deliberate, like something was pacing inside the walls, keeping time with his breath. By the second week, Alex felt watched. His mirror showed flickers of movement, gone when he turned. His laptop glitched, files rearranging themselves overnight. Clara was still friendly, but she started locking her room, even when she was home. Once, Alex caught her staring at his door, her face blank, paint smudged on her hands like bruises. She smiled when she saw him, but it was forced, her fingers twitching. That night, the scratches were sharper, joined by a low hum, like a voice trapped in static. Alex woke to find his vent cover loose, screws scattered on the floor. He confronted Clara gently, asking about the noises. She shrugged, saying she heard nothing, but her voice was tight. "Maybe it's the neighbors," she offered, though the loft was stand-alone, no shared walls. Alex didn't push, but he started locking his door, sleeping with a lamp on. The scratches followed him, now in the ceiling, the floor, always stopping when he spoke. On the 10th night, he woke to silence, too perfect, too heavy. His vent was open, a faint breeze carrying the smell of paint and something sour. He shone a light inside and saw nothing, but the air felt alive, watching, waiting for him to move. Alex couldn't relax anymore. The loft was no longer a home but a maze of sounds and shadows. Clara was distant, her laughter gone, her paintings darker, swirls of black and red, eyes hidden in the strokes. She stopped cooking, barely left her room, but Alex felt her presence, like she was everywhere. The scratches were constant, a rhythm he couldn't ignore, and he started mapping them, noting where they began, always his vent, then spreading, like something was searching. He inspected the loft, looking for answers. The walls were uneven, with seams that didn't align, as if hiding compartments. His vent led to a narrow duct, too small for a person, but it curved out of sight, the scratches loudest there. He found Clara's old sketches under the couch, floor plans, but wrong, showing rooms that didn't exist, labeled hers and mine. Hers was circled, arrows pointing to the walls, with notes, "Listen. Stay." Alex's skin crawled, but he hid the sketches, afraid to confront her. Online, he searched Clara's name, finding an art blog with her work, normal landscapes, nothing like her current paintings. Comments mentioned a breakdown after a solo exhibit, then silence. The loft's address pulled up complaints from past tenants, noises, missing items, feeling trapped. One review, deleted mid-read, said, "She's not alone in there." Alex's pulse raced, he wasn't imagining this. Clara wasn't just quirky, something was wrong, tied to the loft, to her. The noises changed, scratches became taps, then whispers, not Clara's voice but lower, guttural, coming from everywhere. Alex recorded them, but his phone caught only static, the battery draining instantly. Clara's behavior shifted too, she'd stand in the hall at night, motionless, her shadow stretching too far. Once, he found her painting in the dark, her canvas blank but her brush moving, leaving no mark. "Go to bed, Alex," she whispered, not looking up, and the air turned cold, the whispers in the walls echoing her words. He planned to leave, saving for a deposit, but the loft seemed to know. His keys vanished, reappearing in Clara's room, her door unlocked for once, filled with canvases of his face, eyes scratched out. He didn't ask why, she wasn't Clara anymore, not fully. The final straw was waking to his vent cover off, a handprint in the dust inside, too small to be hers. He barricaded his door, heart pounding, and heard it, a laugh, not Clara's, from the walls, soft and endless, like it knew he was trapped. Alex stopped pretending everything was fine. The loft was alive, and Clara was part of it, or it was part of her. He packed in secret, hiding his bag under his bed, but Clara watched him now, her eyes empty, her hands always moving, like she was painting the air. The whispers were voices, chanting fragments of his thoughts, his fears, his plans, mixing with that sour smell, stronger now, seeping from the vents. He didn't sleep, his body aching, his mind frayed. He tried talking to Clara, one last time, hoping the old her was still there. "What's in the walls?" he asked, voice steady. She froze, then smiled, too wide. "Nothing's in the walls, Alex. It's just us." But her voice cracked, and the taps surged, shaking the loft. That night, he found her door open, her room empty, canvases stacked against the walls, hundreds, all of him, his face distorted, melting into the paint. He ran, locking himself in, but the walls groaned, like they were bending inward. The final night, Alex waited until dawn, when the noises quieted. He grabbed his bag, creeping past Clara's room, but she was there, in the hall, staring at nothing. "You can't leave," she said, her voice layered, like two people speaking. He pushed past, the door sticking, then flying open. The air outside was sharp, clean, and he ran, not looking back. From the street, the loft skylights glinted, and he swore he saw Clara, or something, watching, its shadow too long, too thin. Alex moved to a new city, a studio he could barely afford. The loft was re-rented, the listing scrubbed clean. He doesn't paint anymore, doesn't trust walls, checks vents obsessively. Sometimes, he hears it, a scratch, a whisper, faint but there, in the quiet. Clara's blog is gone, her name erased, but he dreams of her paintings, his face trapped in them, and wakes to the feeling of hands, just out of sight, reaching from the dark. Tessa needed a roommate fast, her old one had bailed, leaving her stuck with a lease she couldn't cover. The apartment was a sunny walk-up in Chicago, with creaky floors and a view of the park. She posted an ad, expecting weirdos, but Noah replied within hours. He was a grad student, studying psychology, with a warm laugh and references that checked out. They met at the apartment, and he was charming, asking about her job as a barista, her favorite books. Tessa felt safe, like he was already a friend, and offered him the room on the spot. Noah moved in smoothly, his stuff minimal, a laptop, some clothes, a stack of notebooks. He was respectful, washing dishes, keeping the music low. Tessa loved their late-night talks, where he'd analyze her stories with uncanny insight, like he could see inside her head. But something nagged at her. Noah knew things, small details about her day, her habits, before she mentioned them. "Rough shift at the cafe," he'd say, when she hadn't told him she'd spilled coffee everywhere. She laughed it off, assuming he was just observant. At night, the apartment felt different. Tessa heard murmurs, like a radio left on, coming from Noah's room. His light was always on, a faint glow under his door, and she'd catch him pacing, muttering to himself. Once, she knocked, worried, and he opened the door instantly, smiling, but his room was bare, no books, just a chair facing the wall. "Couldn't sleep," he said, but his hands were clenched, knuckles white. Tessa backed off, her gut twisting, though she couldn't say why. The murmurs grew louder, not words but tones, weaving into her dreams, Noah's voice, reciting her fears, her past, things she'd buried. She'd wake sweaty, her door unlocked, though she swore she'd bolted it. Noah was always up, offering tea, his eyes too bright, like he hadn't slept either. She found notes in his handwriting, random phrases, like, Tessa hates silence, or, she checks the locks twice, tucked in her bag, her books. He denied writing them, his face calm, but she saw his pen, the ink matching perfectly. By the second week, Tessa felt exposed, like Noah was peeling back her layers. He'd finish her sentences, predict her moods, his voice soft but heavy. The murmurs followed her, even when he wasn't home, humming through the walls. One night, she woke to him standing in her doorway, motionless, staring. "You were crying," he said, though she hadn't made a sound. She locked her door after that, but the key was gone by morning, and Noah was there, smiling, holding it. "Found this," he said, and the murmurs laughed, low and endless, from somewhere deep in the apartment. Tessa stopped feeling safe. Noah was still kind, still helpful, but his presence was a weight, pressing against her. The notes multiplied, pages of her thoughts, her routines, written like a study. Tessa avoids mirrors. Tessa dreams of running. She tore them up, but they reappeared, stuffed in drawers, taped to her fridge. Noah acted confused, but his eyes gleamed, like he was testing her. She changed her locks, but he always had a key, his smile never faltering. The apartment turned against her. Lights dimmed when Noah spoke, casting his shadow too large. Her phone recorded static, snippets of her voice, private moments, like her crying after a fight with her mom, though she hadn't hit record. Noah's notebooks were everywhere now, filled with diagrams of her life, timelines, habits, fears, labeled subject, T. She confronted him, voice shaking, and he leaned close, whispering, "You're fascinating, Tessa. Don't you want to be known?" The murmurs surged, chanting her name, and she ran to her room, barricading the door. She researched Noah, digging through his university site. He was enrolled, but his advisor's email bounced back, and his classmates hadn't seen him in months. A psychology forum mentioned a student obsessed with mapping minds, dropped for ethics violations, but the thread was locked, the user banned. Tessa's fear deepened. Noah wasn't just odd, he was unraveling her, piece by piece, and the apartment was helping him. The murmurs became voices, reciting her secrets, her guilt over her mom, her fear of being alone. They came from the vents, the walls, even her pillow. Noah was always there, watching, his notebooks open, pen moving. She stopped eating his food, drinking his tea, but her thoughts slowed, her body heavy, like the air was drugged. Once, she woke to him sitting on her bed, a recorder in his hand, capturing her sleep-talking. "Just research," he said, but his voice was wrong, layered, like the murmurs, and the recorder hissed when she grabbed it, burning her skin. Tessa planned to leave, hiding her intent, but Noah seemed to know. He'd blocked the hall, asking questions, why she was distant, what she was hiding. The voices grew louder, accusing, and her mirrors showed Noah's face, not hers, staring back. The final straw was finding her journal, private, locked in her safe, open on his desk, every page copied in his script. She screamed, but the walls swallowed her voice, and Noah was there, smiling, saying, "You can't hide from yourself, Tessa." Tessa was done. Noah wasn't human anymore, he was the apartment, the voices, the notes, all of it consuming her. She packed at night, whispering to stay calm, but the murmurs mocked her, reciting her plan. Noah stopped pretending, following her openly, his notebooks piled high, pages spilling out, her life, dissected, predicted. The lights flickered, plunging her into darkness, and the voices roared, chanting, "Stay, Tessa, stay." She tried reasoning with him, one last time. "What do you want?" she asked, voice breaking. Noah tilted his head, like she was a puzzle. "To know you. Completely." The air thickened, the walls pulsing, and she saw it, his shadow, stretching, splitting, like it had hands. She ran, grabbing her bag, but the door wouldn't budge, the lock twisting under her fingers. Noah watched, writing, his pen scratching like the voices, endless, hungry. She smashed a window, climbing out, the glass cutting her palms. The street was silent, the city asleep, and she ran, not looking back. From the alley, the apartment's windows glowed, Noah's silhouette in every one, motionless, his pen still moving. Tessa crashed with a coworker, then fled Chicago, renting a basement far away. The apartment was leased again, Noah's name gone from the records, like he'd never existed. Tessa doesn't trust roommates now, doesn't share walls. She checks mirrors, burns her journals, but the voices linger, faint, in the quiet, whispering her name. Sometimes, her phone buzzes, a text from an unknown number, "I'm still learning, Tessa." She deletes them, but they come back, and in her dreams, Noah's there, his notebook open, writing her life, line by line, forever.